Morning, everybody. Welcome to this, which is the 14th, believe it or not, Firestarter Forum. So pushing a year since we started these. As people know, people who came a couple of weeks ago, what we decided to do based on the interest and all the subsequent conversation from the forum at the beginning of the month was to run a second one this month. And as always, the challenge is to work out exactly what the topic of the forum should be based on what people are talking about. And really the message we want to get across today is that we had a really good conversation last time, but now it's time to start thinking about how can we actually adopt a more structured approach to workplace well-being. So that's the topic of today. And as always, I'll just give you a really quick run through of what we're going to do in the next 75 minutes. We'll start with a test poll. So I'm going to set you a little bit of homework to do, possibly, if you can get to it. If you can't, just make it up whilst I'm talking through the next couple of slides. The first question is going to be, the first test poll question is going to be about what were you doing on this day a year ago? So what were you doing on the 25th of February 2020, which was a Tuesday. So the question just talks about were you in the office, were you out at customer meetings, were you on a day off? Just so if you've got a quick chance to dig into your diary and find that out whilst I'm just talking through this slide, do. If you don't or can't be bothered, just make it up based on what you know to be the likely answer. So what we're going to do in the next 75 minutes, we'll do the poll. I'll just kind of get us back in gear from where we were last time, share a few more thoughts, and then we're delighted actually that in this short space of time we've been able to organise for Colette Norbury from Mind, from the Oxfordshire branch of Mind, to come and give us some actual structured guidance on the things we should be doing in the workplace for our employees and ourselves. We will then have a breakout session as usual. We have once more the very popular interview. So Dave Harries will interview John Cooper. That's going to be very exciting. Then we'll do some more polls. We'll have a chat with everybody, and then we'll close off with, subject to the second poll we're about to run, we'll close off with a bit of fun. So that is the plan. As usual, let me just quickly remind people about Zoom. Most people have been on these forums lots of times now. We've brought you all on mute. Hopefully you're on video. Definitely for the breakout sessions, that would be great. Best view is the full screen view, which you can select from the top right hand corner, assuming you're on a reasonably up-to-date version of Zoom. Breakout sessions, you don't need to do anything. We'll put you straight into breakout. In the open forum, again, we'll bring you in. It's actually generally easier if you unmute yourself than us trying to do it, but we're sort of always on our mettle if you're struggling. Any questions, please send them either to the forum master, who you should be able to pick up in the chat, or just put them in the general chat, or send them directly to Matt Wheeler if you know how to get to him. So let's go on and do the poll. So we're going to do two polls. So as sort of teased, the first poll is a question about this time last year, exactly this time last year. So hopefully you've had a chance to check your diary to see what you're doing this time last year. If not, just take a best guess. So what were you doing? Were you in the office all day, out of the office at meetings, working from home, having a day off, or none of the above? And the only reason I really wanted to do this was A, a bit of fun, and B, just to get a bit of a feel for what it was like a year ago, because we've all kind of forgotten that in our own little ways, what normal used to look like. So we're pretty well there. Somebody's having a day off. How lucky. I know that this time last year, Matt Wheeler and I were filming the Firestarter video, and I was very ill. So if you want to look at the Firestarter video on our website in greater detail, you see I was very ill. So, right, I think we're there. And if we just share the results, very much we were doing things that we're not doing now. So we were either in the office all day or out of the office at meetings. Amazing what happens in the space of a year, isn't it? Wow. So there we go. Okay, and then we'll do a second quick poll. And without wanting to lead the witness, the answer that we are looking for here is yes. So If we have time at the end of today's session, should we ask comedian John Cooper, who is being interviewed by Dave Harries in the 5 Minutes With slot, to run a little session to lift all of our moods? The answer you want to go for is yes. If you violently object, maybe. Oh dear. Right, that's probably John voting for the maybe. Let's just go through. We are done. Good news. We are going to have a bit of a fun at the end of this session with John. So John is now relieved. So congratulations. Right, let's keep going then. If we just talk about, you might have to clear that poll off your screen, by the way. That is, as I've said several times, the one thing we can't do for you. So if we just reflect on what we were doing last time, a couple of weeks ago, we had this session on what does looking after employee well-being really mean. And we were really fortunate to be joined by a couple of people. Firstly, we had Rachel Roberts, from Harrison Clark Rickaby's Solicitors. There I am in my matching black shirt to this, which I understand is mustard shirt. Apparently, we were talking about this before, and mustard is one step to beige, apparently, I've been told, one step away from beige. So we were talking about our obligations as business leaders, but also the opportunities that this presents for us at this time. If you didn't make it last time and you want to watch this, it was really fascinating. Rachel did a really good job for us. The video is available to watch. I think it's about minute 11 that we went to Rachel. My main conclusions from that session were that it feels as though we're moving into this period of formalization of what's been going on over the last 12 months. And that was generally a theme that came out in the discussions afterwards. And there were lots of really interesting points about different demographics, the fact that people of different age groups, backgrounds, I guess just social situations had different challenges when adjusting to the new normals. And employers had a responsibility to think about that. And then one of the really interesting questions that came up in the group chat afterwards was about, do employers actually have the right to insist that employees have vaccines before they come back to work? So that was all very fascinating. And then we moved on to what was inflationarily a session which was called 7 Minutes With, which was Dan and Dave. My apologies for the picture, gentlemen. You both seem to be looking in opposite directions. And that was a fascinating session during which Dave talked to Dan about Dan's re-engineering and his restatement of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I appreciate this is small, but you should have seen this come out in the follow-up work afterwards. We also talked about really picking apart what it means for employers now and what they need to provide in the work place to fulfill changing needs of their employee bases. So both of these sessions provoked a lot of questions and thoughts and a fundamental desire to discuss this more. And my conclusion from it was that what was actually previously quite a blurry image of what the future needed to look like is now actually starting to sharpen up quite a lot, which brings us to this really interesting position. And this is one of my favourite sayings, which is I saw it on a birthday card once, and it's always stuck with me, that amateurs practice until they get it right, professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. And I think really I thought it was important to put this up because it just takes us to this point where we have to think about professionalizing our approach to employee well-being and thinking harder about exactly the rigor and the organization that we need to have in our businesses to do a professional job of it, a structured job of it, rather than perhaps just picking some things to do somewhat randomly. So I do have to have my grammar rant at this point. It was very difficult to find this image with practice spelt correctly. So the pedants amongst you will note, like I do, that ironically one of the practices is the amateur's practice is spelt correctly and the professional's practice is spelt incorrectly. I was going to give you my mum's lesson on practice, advice, license, but we haven't got time for that. So I just have corrected it just for my own there we go, beautiful. Right, so without further ado, what we thought would be a really good idea would be to invite somebody from a professional body to come to talk to us today about what we actually should be doing as business leaders. There's an excellent group based out of Oxfordshire, which I was invited to join probably 4 or 5 years ago, and was never able to go to it. It's called The Big Gig, and it meets once a month at 6 o'clock in Oxford on a Wednesday. I think it's a Wednesday evening. And basically every time The Big Gig focuses on looking at a business and working out, taking the advice of other business owners and leaders to sort a particular challenge faced by that business. And since about this time last year, I've been going to that virtually, and there have been some really fascinating businesses going through it. Frank Nigriella, who often comes on these forums, runs it along with a gentleman called Paul Essery, who's also been here. Really interesting. And I've personally met some really interesting people, some of whom are here today as well through that group. But at the beginning of this month, it was Oxfordshire Mind who came on and were talking about their challenges with ensuring that they were getting the maximum possible reach into businesses. So I thought, why not invite them on? And potentially as a group here today, we should try and do something to support this cause, which I think is a really interesting thing to do. So I'm going to introduce now Colette Norbury, who is a training lead from Oxfordshire Mind. I don't think Mind particularly needs any massive introduction, but it's a national charity providing advice and support to empower anyone experiencing a mental health problem, and campaigning to improve services, raise awareness, and promote understanding. And their mantra is they won't give up until everyone experiencing a mental health problem gets support and respect. So that's the national position. Oxfordshire Mind has 5 offices throughout Oxfordshire, and Colette herself is an experienced and dynamic mental health consultant, trainer and speaker with over 20 years experience. She set up the workplace wellbeing provision at Mind Oxfordshire in May 2019, establishing a strong reputation for delivering an approachable and effective service, reaching thousands of employees. So her work is aiming to decrease stigma and increase education and support for mental health at work. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Colette Norbury. So hi, Colette.
Morning. Thank you so much for that introduction, Chris. Yes, my name's Colette Norbury, training lead from Oxfordshire Mind. And I would like to start my presentation just by reiterating there what Chris said, that this is our vision, this is what we do. We promote good mental health through the provision of high quality services. And the workplace wellbeing provision that I head up is just one of those services, and the income that we generate helps to go and support and fund the myriad of free services that Oxfordshire Mind provides. So what I'd like to start with is some words from an employee. On the net, thank you. This is some words from an employee who last year was experiencing some difficulties at work. I really want to tell you just how much of a positive impact on my mental health working for the company has been. I have never felt more supported in a workplace before, and I can feel how much of a positive impact it has been. I really wanted to just say thank you for all your efforts. It is so appreciated and has really been quite life-changing for me in many ways. And it was the director of this company that shared this email with me. And the backstory to this is that this director, back in March 2020, I trained the director along with the manager from their company, and I trained them as mental health first aiders. And it was right on the cusp of the very first lockdown. And the director then went on to use the practical skills that they had learned on the course to support their employees as they went in and out of all the different lockdowns. And importantly, the director said that they had learned how to help employees to help themselves, which I thought was a really valid, a really important observation. And this was a chain of very successful hairdressing salons throughout Oxford that this director was running. How exciting to think of the workplace as a place where we can learn about our health and where our health can actually improve. So I really love that quote. The director also explained that their approach to wellbeing in the workplace, they had actually seen absenteeism drop and morale and productivity rise within their workforce, despite the stress of all the uncertainty and of the salons opening and closing through all the various lockdowns. So then, which takes us to the economic case for investment. And so an observation there from a report featured in the Mental Health Foundation's article there mentioned at the bottom. That the relationship of well-being with productivity is key. If we look after the well-being of our workforce, then we're also looking after productivity, and that is just common sense, really, when you think about it. But what I'd like to consider when we look at this quote is, how do we promote well-being? And what does intervention, in italics there, actually look like? So let's have a think about that next. What does intervention mean? Well, it can look something like this. And what we're talking about here is how it can help us to form a strategy, whatever the size of a company. So I've worked with companies of just a few people to huge companies with a global impact. A survey, on the left-hand side there of the list, can really help us to listen to our workforce and find out what's going on. We must never make assumptions about how people are feeling at work at the moment. And so really important to think of a way to get some feedback from people, be that anonymous. It is possible. There are surveys from Investors in People. Mind has the Workplace Wellbeing Index, and I can share these resources with you afterwards as well. From there, people can be provided with personalised information and advice. That could be signposting them to places like Mind. Your local charities, the Samaritans, also has a listening service for people. You don't have to be in crisis to talk to somebody. So it can be that kind of signposting for people as well. The third segment on there in green is something I'm very involved in, and that's a really exciting part where you're helping a company to work out a rolling programme of seminars and workshops, and that's the fun part, really. It is planning a strategy going forward, whether that's across a year, whether that's 2 years. And I'm seeing more and more companies doing this now. So rather than just saying one day a year, we're going to have a wellbeing day, they're thinking, right, what can we plan that's in our budget as a rolling programme? And obviously that can include specific training for managers and leads. It's really exciting. I've got a really privileged position, actually, having trained a lot of managers and leads, to see their confidence soar and they actually become excited about supporting their teams. So that's a real bonus. And it's something, and I think in that as well, it's really important for people to know that it's not training people to be experts or therapists, but to have some knowledge. Again, is really key. And so what we're doing is encouraging an honest and supportive ethos. But how can we as leaders promote an honest and supportive ethos? What's this all about? So I'm sharing with you here our wheel to get us really thinking about how we can be leaders in mental health. Now, anyone can take a lead in mental health, if that's sharing some things that help them. But if we start in the top orange segment of the wheel here, and we're going to go down in that order. So starting off with knowledge and skills, this is what everybody says to me is how important it is for everybody, particularly leaders within an organisation, to have some knowledge. Remember, not to learn to be therapists or experts, but just to have some knowledge of symptoms. What is it like for somebody experiencing debilitating anxiety or depression whilst trying to work, and tools to support people as well. There are plenty of tools out there, and learning what well-being actually is. It's bandied around a lot, that word, but what is it? And that can take us nicely into exploring the culture and fun to be had around learning about wellbeing. You know, as teams working remotely, one thing I'm seeing lots of is people learning how to connect via wellbeing tasks. You know, whether it's something like, can we achieve all of the 5 ways to wellbeing in a day, in a week, cycling challenges, how many squats can you do in 30 seconds? You know, these sort of things that are getting people moving, it's getting people engaging in wellbeing. So that, you know, there's fun to be had. Wellbeing festivals I'm seeing going on, and it's all being done remotely. So there's some great ideas out there. Thinking about ourselves as leaders as well. Think of a manager who works really, really hard, you know, passionate about their job, but they're sending emails at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 10 p.m. You know, what message is that disseminating to their teams? Think of another manager, equally passionate and hardworking, work long hours sometimes, but they take it off in toil. They take their leave. They might share with their team where they went for a walk at lunchtime. Don't underestimate the impact that you can have as a leader to really sow the seeds and to set a good example to people. And it can be these small things that have a really big impact. With that as well, what we've seen a lot of with the impact of COVID-19 is it's okay sometimes to share vulnerability as leaders as well. Last year, the CEO of Mind Oxfordshire was giving us regular updates through webinars. You know, we've got him on a bit of a pedestal. But one day he just sighed in one of these webinars and said, I'm finding this really hard. I don't enjoy working from home. You know, he had his small children running around asking for chocolate in the middle of the webinar and all this sort of thing. But he just admitted, and he showed a little bit of vulnerability, that he was finding it tough. And what it did was it opened the door for the rest of us to kind of go, yeah, it is hard going, this, isn't it? And that can be massive. Don't underestimate the impact of sharing a little bit of vulnerability. It's fine to do as a leader, because it will allow others to share if they're feeling the same. And when they are, you know, validating feelings and using something like compassionate directness as a key tool, which nips us back up to the orange segment again. You know, we're not all natural at these skills, but we can learn them. And again, that's what's really exciting about the training that is available around this topic. You know, compassionate directness, one of those things that it allows us to address things like a drop in productivity or a drop in morale, but from a compassionate point of view. And so in this way, we're being supportive, proactive and protective of our workforce as well, embedding wellbeing support tools into employee procedures. And again, these are tools which can be learnt so that it becomes part of the people management. So these tools, such as the Wellness Action Plan from Mind, just helps us. It gives them some structure to have conversations with people and become part of the supervision, the appraisal procedures, so that what we're doing is, does your company have a mission statement on its website or wherever? Let's embed these practices into your mission as a company. So enthusiasm, commitment and discourse needs to come from the top in order for investment to be effective from a human and financial perspective. So to sum up then, where to start? Really, I'm aware that for a lot of people, there's some fear around the topic. So embark on an honest journey and explore any fears that you might have around this topic, and have a look at how we can sort of break down those barriers. Include senior leaders on any wellbeing task force. This is really vital. And I've mentioned, you know, the surveys as ways to get feedback from your teams, as well as how they're finding things, particularly working remotely, and some other pointers there. So have a think about where you will start. And I've just included a quote here from Steve Arnold as well. I just really like his approach here. And just to draw your attention to something I've been very aware of over the last year, is the strain on people working in HR. I've spoken to so many people in these positions, in these lead positions as well. And what they're asking for is for it to be shared, is for the responsibility to be shared. It's much safer, and it makes your company much less vulnerable if people can decide what responsibilities they're going to take. Because we need to share the responsibility to gain the best return on our investment. So to finish with, through Chris, I'm going to share some resources. Some of the things I've mentioned there in the last 10 minutes are going to be available to you as well. And thank you so much. And I hope I've just highlighted briefly there some answers to what does looking after your employee wellbeing really mean. Thank you so much for your time.
Colette, thank you very much. Oh, echoing. So I think I've actually taken more notes in that little 12 minutes, perfectly timed 12 minutes, by the way, that I've ever done on one of these. So you get the prize for that. No offense to everybody else that's ever been on. Yeah. So really interesting things. Firstly, obviously, I have to make the comment that you and I are incredibly well coordinated with our choice of outfits today. Which is impressive. It looks a little bit like we're on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, which is great. But really great things. I made the point, and this came out quite clearly at the Big Gig event as well, that obviously because of what's going on with the virtual reach, you're able to sort of go beyond Oxfordshire as well at the moment, which is quite an interesting thing. And it also really links, there's so many parallels to the Firestarter mindset, which anybody that's ever done any work with Firestarter know we talk about rhythm and rigor, little and often, like programs that actually embed cultural changes. And I think this is really linked to that. I love the idea of a rolling program and the sort of the concept of ambassadors as well. So I think it's fascinating, actually. So I think hopefully what will happen as we move through the rest of this session, there'll be lots of ideas, and there's around, and Matt will tell me the proper number. I'll just make up a number because that's what I do. But there's around 150 people that have been involved in these forums over the last year in various ways, and probably on average, if each one of those businesses had, let's say, 10 people in their reach, it just gives us a massive reach as a group. We have a great responsibility as a group of people to reach out to a large number of business employees. So it's really interesting. So thank you very much, Colette.
You're very welcome.
So what we'll do is we're about to go into the breakouts, and what I would say is if you have any specific questions for Colette, then chat about them in the breakouts, and also if you've got any follow-up questions from last time that we didn't cover that you want to cover, please just tell the facilitator in the breakout or put them in the chat yourself, and we'll make sure when we have a bit of interaction at the end that we get through all of those points that we can. So now we are going to go to the breakouts. Just the guidelines for the very few people that won't have done this before. So we're going to put you into a breakout for 15 minutes with some random people, but you'll probably have met some of these people before. Each breakout should have a Firestarter facilitator. If it becomes obvious that there isn't one, then if somebody could quickly volunteer to be the facilitator, that would be great. The thing to watch, honestly, is don't spend 14 minutes doing introductions. Just if you want to do introductions, please just do them really punctually and get onto the topic. There's plenty of time for follow-up afterwards. There's a countdown clock in the room. You'll see it. And also the facilitator will try and keep us all moving as well. So the topic for discussion is, and this is actually more a task than a topic. I think what we should try and do is just think about everything we've talked about in the last couple of sessions, and actually try and start the beginnings of an employee well-being manifesto. So it doesn't have to be a big job. All I think we should do is just pick out 4 or 5 points which as a group you think are the right things to do. And I think we've been given a massive head start by Colette in terms of good ideas. But if we could just maybe try and start to structure what we think are the right things for us as employers, business owners, business leaders to be doing to get some proper structure around our employee wellbeing strategies, that would be really useful. If facilitators, you can by hook or by crook, get a bit of feedback to Matt, so he stands a chance of organising the Q&A at the end. That will be really good. Obviously, we've got the polls after the breakout, so you've got a bit of time to do it during that as well. So that is the plan. Have a great time, and we will see you in 15 minutes. Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you had a good 15 minutes in the breakouts. No doubt there was plenty of really interesting conversation. The thing I meant to say, which I didn't before everybody went in, was if as a result of this we get something really meaningful together, then we'll try and actually structure something that we can share with everyone based on everybody's ideas. That's a bit of a plan that we have. So what we'll do later on, once we've gone through the polls and had the 5-minute interview session, we'll actually dig into some of the conversations that have been going on a little bit. So facilitators, please do get some points across to Matt as soon as you can. So let's move on and do. We've got a couple of polls, and these are actually just temperature-taking polls, actually, if nothing else. So the first poll, it was mentioned briefly. The Mind actually do a thing called the Workplace Wellbeing Index. And I would just really be interested if we Firestarter could organise a way for this community, this Firestarter Forum community, which, as I say, probably has a reach of up to 1,500 people, if not more. Bearing in mind we have some large organisations in our mix as well. But if we could organise a way for this community to take part in the 2021 Workplace Wellbeing Index, and possibly along the way find a way to have some sort of some token fundraising. I just wondered if people would be interested in that. So please do fire away, answer the question. It's a yes, maybe, no. And we're virtually there. As I say, we're just taking the temperature to see whether it's something worth exploring. So I think we're pretty well there with the voting. So thank you very much. And that's really encouraging. So let us take that away and see if we can do something with it. And similarly, the next question is about actually seeing whether we could organise something between us to benefit from the critical mass that we have with this group. So if we Firestarter could organise a way to offer broader, wider scale training via Mind for employee wellbeing, i.e. for the employees of the Firestarter Forum community, would you be interested? So same question, yes, maybe, or no. So again, it just gives us an opportunity to see whether this is something that is worth us exploring. So thank you very much. Very interesting, and again, overwhelmingly positive. So if we just share the results. So great. So we will similarly take that away, and over the next couple of weeks, we shall think about what we can do to try and leverage some of the great stuff that we've been talking about today. So now what we are going to do is we are going to move on to the slot that we first introduced a couple of months ago, which was mainly the 5 minutes with slot. It got a little bit of inflation last week, and last time we made it up to 7 minutes. We're really fortunate that Dave Harries, who we've known for a long time, he's a ex-BBC professional interviewer, podcaster, does some great work. If you're ever thinking about doing podcasts, I highly recommend working with Dave, and especially with the form of podcasts that he does. They're a really good way to get content out of you and down into a usable format that can be shared. So please, if you're interested, listen to some of his work. Really interesting. So I always love to share the Firestarter values as much as I can with people. And the 5 Firestarter values are clarity, action, accountability, independency, and the last one is fun. We always try and have some fun along the way. So what better way to instill some fun in the context of this topic than by interviewing a professional comedian with the twist that he is increasingly working across organizations, businesses, to underline how he can play a role in improving well-being and approaches to what we do on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to now hand over to Dave Harries for this forum's 5 minutes with John Cooper.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome to 5 Minutes With. My guest this morning, as Chris said, is John Cooper. He is a Firestarter Forum regular who describes himself as a comedian and illustrator. John studied art and design at university and since then has had a variety of roles, building websites, designing books and TV productions, and even storyboards for movies. As a stand-up comedian, John has taken shows to the Edinburgh Fringe and is a regular at venues around the UK and internationally. In 2000, he set up Rocket Steps to bring humour and improvisation to his coaching, training and design work. During the pandemic, John has transferred his live stand-up skills to Zoom and YouTube. Look out for Comedy Sports with a Z on YouTube to find some of John's work. So, John, a very warm welcome to 5 Minutes With. Did you always know you were going to be a comedian?
No, I didn't. I just kind of fell into it. I was a very nerdy child, very introspective. It was only much later that I fell into it.
It strikes me as a pretty scary thing to do, stand up. I mean, it's one, I suppose perhaps if you've never done it, you don't know, but it looks really scary. What was your first live gig like? I mean, do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I died on my bum horribly. I died for the first 2 years. I just really enjoyed doing it. There's something about stand-up which is quite confessional. It's kind of like, this is what I think, and you've got it's like a platform for free speech almost. So I started out in a workshop, which was a very supportive environment to start in. Which is interesting because I started doing a workshop and then later when I relocated to Manchester, I started running stand-up comedy workshops because by that point I'd been doing stand-up for about 8 or 9 years. And I ran it in conjunction with the improv group that I'm with and discovered that you've got stand-up comedy and you've got improv comedy, and the two very different things. One is a very lonely business of standing up on stage and going, this is what I think about the world and I hope you find it funny. And the other one is a very more collaborative, supportive environment. And that's perfect for kind of the learning space and almost the personal development space as well.
Yeah, I think the improv stuff actually possibly scares me even more than stand-up.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, looking at you guys doing improv, I mean, I'm full of wonder about how you do it, and you just come up with these ideas. You think so quickly on your feet. But anyway, if I could turn the conversation a little bit more towards today's theme, which is obviously
Yes.
Mental well-being. In your role as a trainer and a coach, I mean, how have you approached that, particularly in the last year?
Okay. In the last year, I have brought what I've been doing live onto Zoom, and I had to skill up quite a lot to do it. It's funny that you should say, Dave, improv is scary. There's a really big fundament in improv, which is yes and, which is accept and build. And that is a theatrical term that means when you get on stage with somebody and they say, Dad, what's for breakfast? You don't turn around and say, I'm not your dad and we're both in space. That's rubbish. That makes improv rubbish. What you do is you accept what the person says and you build a scene from that. And it's a theatrical tool, but if you ask any improviser who's been doing long enough, if you ask Pippa Evans, who did an article for The Guardian yesterday, which is online, she talks about improv being a very fundamental and good life-changing experience because it's where you get the building blocks of confidence to get on stage and do stuff. It's a collaborative process where you are accepting, I accept what this person says to me, and I build on top of what I now know in this particular moment. And that's beginning to start sounding like therapy because it can be used in those terms. There's a thing called applied improvisation where people do literally, there's a woman in Florida who uses improvisation for personal development. Applied improvisation is taking the tools of theatre improv and using them in a more practical and constructive way. And obviously if anyone's ever done CBT, how do you feel about this and what are you going to do about it? That's the same question as well. How do I feel? What are you going to do? This is the situation you've been put in. Life's a bit shit. How are you going to fix it? If you begin to use these particular tools that improv gives you, it's like layering up levels of adaptability and resilience that you can use to deal with situations.
Well, John, obviously we could go on for hours about this, and I wish we
Yeah, we
had
could.
hours to do it. But the Firestarter people, they'll only give us 5 minutes. So what can we do? But before we finish, we've got a few seconds left. Any tips for people that have to communicate regularly with an audience, either via Zoom or hopefully one day live? A couple of quick tips for how you approach that if you haven't had access to your training.
How can I fill 30 seconds to answer such a big question? Certainly, I think one trap, I'll just bring it back to what I said. The yes and thing can be used in conjunction with, we all get a little bit of what if this, what if that, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen right now? And if you're not going to get shot by a gun or fall off a cliff, then surely the only answer is everything's pretty good, actually. There's only good stuff can happen. So it's all about developing a robust mindset towards things and not catastrophizing, and using fun and positive energy to allow yourself to use humor, give yourself permission to be funny.
Okay, well, that is great advice, John. Thank you very much for that. And the worst thing that can happen to us is that we run out of time, and we have. So thank you very much for being on 5 Minutes With. And now back to Chris at Firestarter HQ.
Thank you very much, both of you. Fascinating. I was really fortunate to go on a small improv workshop with John last week, and it was, I have to say, it was great fun. And on reflection, I think my whole life has been one big improvisation. And I didn't see that interview going where it went, actually, which was starting really quickly to underline how improvisation skills are building blocks for resilience, and I think that's a really interesting angle. So now we get to the point, he said, keeping an eye on time. Now we get to the point where we are going to have a bit of feedback from what people have been talking about, and so I'm going to invite on screen with me Mr. Matthew Wheeler, who hopefully is going to come and bring us some goodies to talk about. Here he is. Hello, Matthew.
Hello. Yeah, I'm just busy collating information. So lots of information coming through again, which is really good. Lots of really positive discussions, actually. So I think if I quickly talk through what my group was talking about, and then maybe we can bring Colette back on screen as well, because I think then there's some interesting points that are raised that Colette could sort of make some comments on. And I think what we referenced as well was actually a lot of the stuff that Colette raised earlier in her presentation. And I think the key thing that we talked about was the fact that employees need have a safe space to be able to talk about anything that's bothering them. And I think that's a cultural change that organizations need to really focus on at the moment. There needs to be an opportunity for people to take some time out from work and just share things with their colleagues, but also have that freedom to be able to ask any question they want to. I think it was raised in the last forum that the kind of ask me anything type approach is something that we need to focus on. And linked to that as well is that that ability to really get people to open up, because Freya in our group said that there's that toxic positivity that people sort of talk about, where you ask a simple question where you just say, "Are you okay?" Someone will automatically say, "Yeah, I'm fine," but you actually can't get under the surface of what's really going on. And it goes back to what you said last week, Chris, about you don't know what's going on behind closed doors, and we need a mechanism to be able to peel away the layers and understand what's troubling people, and you got to be able to ask questions in a different way so that you can understand what people's frustrations are. And then I think in terms of the manifesto side of things, we talked about mental health first aiders. That's, I think, really important. We've all got physical first aiders in our business. Why haven't we got mental health first aiders? That's something that I think that is a new way of thinking. And then there's the ability to measure happiness, which is a really, really difficult one to focus on, and measuring the temperature of how your team are feeling, and get a really kind of honest view on that. So those were the sorts of things that we talked about, and obviously just picking up on again some of the things that Colette raised earlier. In addition to that, I've got lots of other issues coming up from the through the chat from the group. So if I could go to Adrian Danks, who was running a group with Alan Tattersall, Jeffrey Keys, and Daniela. There are a number of points that they raised which are really interesting as well. So if Adrian could come on screen, that would be great, and we can have a quick chat with Adrian about his points as well.
Colette's here as well. Hello, Colette.
Hello.
Excellent.
And then there was four. So I had room one, which, as you said, Matt, was Alan, Jeffrey, and Daniela. So we did a superb job of sort of crossing the generational Rubicon there. We had a full range. So you know me, I stick to the brief. So we've come up with a 4-point manifesto. So point one in our manifesto is that everyone needs to understand it's okay not to be okay, and that we really need to embed that it isn't just a glib statement. It is something that we sort of live and breathe, and everyone, from employee 1 to employee 101, actually sort of lives. And as part of that, the second point in our manifesto is we need to ensure that managers right through to senior leaders are trained to communicate in the right way to live up to point one, to live that through. And Alan's particular point in our sort of current environment is there's an element of tech in there, so we need to be trained on the tech in order to deliver that as well, because there's so little real face-to-face happening at the moment. Our third point in our manifesto is that we'll always use tools and solutions, and particularly support that's appropriate. So it's not the same for everyone. I think it's a point that you made also, Matt, that it's not just having, here are our 5 tools for doing it. The part of the skill and the training needs to be brought out in the appropriateness of how we deal with people in ways that then allow them to be sort of candid and open. And the final point of our manifesto was that we regularly take the pulse of our employees in ways that allow them to be candid, and that their response is fulsome. I think the one thing that was interesting from the older contingent, and I'll include mine in there, is there's a lot of good practice that that over the years has existed in management, and this isn't a baby out with the bathwater exercise. It's just about reapplying it in this sort of new environment of living up to that thing where it's okay not to be okay.
Excellent. I'm just keeping an eye on time. Colette, any thoughts on anything you've heard either from what Matt's been talking about or Adrian's been talking about?
Yes, I think my thought about people sharing is that their vulnerabilities is also only as much as they're comfortable with doing, and people not feeling that they have to. But also there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about talking. It's time to talk, we must talk, and I think the crucial thing is also it's time to listen as well, isn't it? And sometimes just learning how to listen as well. But that was really so heartening to listen to. Thank you so much for that. It's really heartening.
Well, thank you. Well, I think it's been a really, really interesting session. Matt, you have like 1 minute to say anything else you want to say. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would quickly like to bring Andy Whittard on screen if we could, just because he's talked a lot in his group about fatigue in the current lockdown, and particularly within his workforce. And he runs a business that's got 79 people, I think, in it. So Obviously a challenge there to try and sort of raise the mood and sort of get people beyond the fatigue that they're feeling in the current lockdown scenario. So Andy, if you could use your minute to explain a bit more, that would be really helpful.
I will try to be very, very brief. Our group was Rebecca, Donna, and we had the benefit of Colette in our group as well. So we had a little bit of an advantage there. We talked a lot about humility and vulnerability, and particularly sort of almost as a cultural thing, that the leaders in the group are willing to show humility, and not just around well-being and everything, but just around, I don't know all the answers. I don't necessarily know what the best decision tomorrow is about trying to grow the next stage of the business, if you like. So we felt that was an important bit. We also talked about the working from home situation, and certainly this is something that I found that actually that whole working from home thing is not necessarily needs to be the new normal. I think there's a strong need for most people to get back to an office environment, because at the end of the day, we are sociable animals. And I think that, you know, that interaction and that collaboration and that almost casual way that people interact with each other is a great benefit. And then the piece around fatigue, something that we noticed through our business was that by Christmas, there was certainly a lot of fatigue in our business, and actually the Christmas break came just at the right time. But since Christmas, it's been hard going, and I think there's a big seasonal impact around this, and I think that, you know, that whole kind of environmental impact is also a big issue that needs to be considered in these types of situations. Was that
brilliant? That was perfect, Andy. Absolutely brilliant. Really, really interesting, and I think this is going to run and run, and I think we have a good opportunity to try and do something really meaningful with this now. So Colette, we're going to be talking to you. Matt, we've got lots of work to do. So that's really fascinating. And I'll just take this opportunity. Andy, thank you very much. We need to talk anyway. I know we need to talk about other things. Colette, brilliant. Thank you so much for today. Matt, as ever, thank you. I will just wrap up now, and then I shall just hand us over to John, who's going to take us out with a bit of fun. So it's really interesting, actually, Andy's point there. Not deliberately, I promise you, it wasn't a plant. But if you look back to the very first poll question we asked today about what people were doing on this day a year ago, it was fundamentally activities that were much more sociable than what we're doing now. So being in the office or being out and about at customer meetings. So we have got a big U-turn potentially to think about as we move towards normality. Right. So brilliant stuff. I am going to hand over to John, who is going to give us 3 or 4 minutes of end of show fun. Just before I do that, I would like to tell you that our plan probably between now and June is to possibly do 2 forums a month if we have the content and we have the desire to do it, just to get us through to the end, maybe, I don't know. And we will continue to step up, trying to do lots of work with this broader community. As I say, I think we've got a really good reach and we have a really good opportunity to do something. Thanks as ever to everybody, to Colette, Dave, John, Matt, the production team, Stephen and Paddy, absolutely brilliant. Please do keep tuning in, and I'll take my farewells now, but I will hand over to John, who will just take us out with a bit of fun for 3 or 4 minutes. John, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, people, you wonderful Firestarter people. Okay, just a little bit of fun and a little bit of brain food to finish the session with. So I would like you to point one of your fingers at the screen, please. And with your other hand, I'd like you to give me a thumbs up with the other hand like that. Okay, and then I'd like you to flip them once so that your thumb on the other hand's up and your fingers up, and then flip them back again so that your fingers back where the first finger was and the other thumb, and then flip them again so you flip them the other way again, and then just keep going like that. One finger, one thumb, keep moving, and we'll all be merry and bright. I can see you're all doing it. You've all got, some of you are doing it, and some of you have given up. Some of you well, what this is, you might have heard of a thing called unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know if I'm any good at it. That's unconscious incompetence. And what we want to try to do is get from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. That's where we're not even thinking about something, but we're really good at doing it. And you'd be surprised that if you keep doing this one, you can get there in about a minute or so. So we move from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, which is, I've gone off the screen. The host has asked you to start your video. There, I'm back. I'm back. We move from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. That's, I know what I'm doing now, but I don't know if I'm any good at it. I might be rubbish at it. I don't know yet. And then from there, we get to conscious competence, which is, I know what I'm doing, and I think I might be all right at it. And eventually we get to like driving a car, which is unconscious competence. I'm not really thinking about it anymore, but I can do it. So that's fine. It's a good little mindset to get to, and it's a good little fun. That's something you can share with your friends after the today's session. Thank you very much, guys.